All right, folks. Hello. Thanks for joining us tonight. We've got over 600 people registered for tonight's webinar. So Ben and I are excited about presenting to you a practical guide on how to use Moorr to manage your property portfolio. So a couple of things. Thanks to those who contributed to the poll, and we certainly appreciate your time tonight. And that's essentially the reason why we've developed Moorr in the first place. It's really a lifestyle by design app that's designed to give you your time back. So, you can organize more, feel more in control and more confident on life's personal and financial journey. But Moorr, Ben, is all about achieving more with more.
It is, and we've got a little video that will hopefully get people a little bit excited. It sort of speaks to the essence of what Moorr is about, and hopefully in terms of living that lifestyle by design. So we're just going to warm you up with a quick little minute video and see what you think. So hopefully you enjoy. Here we go.
Well, there you go, folks. We've got to admit that we're particularly excited at, getting Moorr to the level that it is, because it really started out as an Excel spreadsheet that had a number of iterations along the way that eventually got up to the cloud. And to have it be where it is today is something that we're enormously proud of. But just so that we can get to know who we're chatting with tonight, I wonder if you could just put in the chat channel a couple of things. One, are you using Moorr currently? Yes or no? And two, next to your answer, if you could just let us know where you are coming from today. Are you in Perth? Are you in New Zealand? Are you in Queensland? We'd love to get a bit of a sense of where our audience is today. And
that's in the Q&A section, yes. So that's really helpful for us. I'm going to move us on to sort of talk to really what we're going to try and cover tonight. So effectively what we're going to be looking at is quite a lot of information around property-centric management and running your property investment portfolio. So by allowing us the opportunity of your time, we're going to be going through those types of questions and answers. And we're going to showcase a couple of those current tools that we're using as part of that story. So let's just sort of look at that. I want to spend a bit of time in terms of talking about the vision of Moorr, and so why we are building it for property investors. As property investors ourselves, Bryce tells the story of we all started on spreadsheets, and then Money Smarts came along, and then we ultimately ran that on spreadsheets and then simulator software. Now we've built that out into a platform that over 50,000 people have also registered to use. So I want to spend a bit of time in sort of reiterating the vision of what Moorr's all about, and because we're only really just beginning. It's sort of like 3 o'clock in terms of the journey that we're going on. Then we want to be obviously doing a brief overview in terms of how to understand it, get under the bonnet a little bit more, so we'll be able to see all of that sort of intricacies around that. And then we'll start introducing some of the tools. So we're obviously going to talk about the Property Cashflow Projection Tool, and then we're going to move on to the demo on the second tool, which is a rental analysis, which is brand new. So we're really excited about that. Then we're going to pause for a little bit of Q&A, get some of that feedback, answer some of those questions that everyone has. Then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming soon as part of that particular story. And so that sort of sets up tonight's presentation. And then I also want to say a little bit of housekeeping. So a big shout out to Jade. So Jade is one of our product managers who also designed these two tools. So she's obviously taken lots of feedback, both from the subject matter knowledge that we have as part of our community and also our staff, and then also feedback from our existing users to come up with this product. And there's also data scientists behind the scenes and all that in terms of the rental analysis work and all those other things that we've done. So that's a really important story for us. So let's kick it off in terms of talking about why we always refer to it as a lifestyle by design. Is there any sort of little other bits of feedback and shout outs?
We'll do a quick bit of update just so we know that there's Ned said yes, he's using Moorr. Mark said using Moorr based in Sydney. We've got Rachel, who's also in Sydney. We've got Tash, who's in Townsville. Ben, we've gone international here because if we go down here, I just saw someone is dialing in from...
Was it Lemos? Where was that?
Thailand, hey?
Thailand? Oh, we got someone in Thailand
So we've got Toowoomba, we've got Canberra, so we've got
lovely.
A wide range. But the overwhelming feedback is that a lot of people are using Moorr, which is...
Hong Kong, I just saw some. So all over, we're global.
We're global.
Very good. So I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for giving us your time live here tonight. It really does mean a lot to us because that's your most precious asset to be able to give that to us as well. So let's start to talk and unpack more in terms of this concept of lifestyle by design. So you start to think about this sort of money, property investment, wealth building, and just living your life journey that you're going on. There's no mistaking that money is involved in that, right? And so we've got to get that money picture right and then you start thinking about, well, what does money mean? And we're all about experiences and what that does around that sort of lifestyle by design. And so really, if I sort of encapsulate all of that story, what we're talking about here is a multitude of mini applications, little mini apps that we're brought into one platform. And so we've got the goal setting, we've got budgeting and money management built in, we've got debt management built in, we've got the banking structures, and that's a really big part about how you set up for success. We've got the property management, we've got the wealth building tracking that's also built in there. And so really it's about getting stuff done. And there again, coming back to that lifestyle by design. And so we think about that very carefully in terms of the journey that's everyone's on. So we've always talked about the fact that with Money Smarts and you're using this platform, you can be 16 years of age or you can be 96. It doesn't really matter. The platform is free to use and it's available and it's going to incorporate all of those aspects associated with it. So what we have done in terms of trying to make it really simple to understand, because there's a lot under the bonnet, is we've broken that down into effectively 4 components. So we've got lifestyle, we've got money, we've got property, and effectively we've got wealth. And so under the lifestyle umbrella, we are talking about setting those goals, planning out those goals, breaking down those goals into micro goals, which then allows you to achieve more. We've got Opti in there celebrating when you achieve some of those things. And there's also some discovery areas in there that make you think critically about the time frame and exactly what big rocks in the jar you're trying to achieve as you go on life's journey. In terms of the money side of it, we're going to unpack in the demonstration here tonight the My Financials, which is effectively the engine room, the structure and fundamentals that drives the whole platform. We're going to showcase a little bit of Money Smarts in there as well. And there's also the great Money Stretch and Money Fit that's part of that. But we really do have the spotlight tonight on the property side for all of us fellow property investors. We are talking about the cash flow projections, the rental analysis, and effectively thinking about Moorr as being the bookkeeping tool and the insights tool that's going to allow you to effectively run and manage your properties in less time than you might have done in the past. So yes, there's a little bit of effort to set up, but once you get set up, it should be hopefully smooth sailing from that point of view. And of course, there is the wealth component, which is, well, we're building wealth where we're making our money work harder for us. And obviously with that money working harder for us, it means we have to have less exertion income and we get more of that passive income that we've always talked about as well.
Now, folks, this is really important too, because the world doesn't need another money app, let's be honest, right? So the fact that you got those 4 pillars there is really important because it's an app for property investors, made by property investors. It's essentially, what did Ben and I need for us to manage our own portfolio? And therefore, through the community that we're building on the Property Couch, through the conversations we're having with the clients, through the networking we do with property investors in general, the idea was, well, how do you manage all of the things that are important to someone in one easy to go app that covers money? That needs to be done because that's important, but it's largely around the vehicle of choice, which in our community, in our ecosystem, is property investing, not exclusively, but typically. With the long-term goal of wealth. But it all starts at the beginning with lifestyle by design. The whole point of doing anything when it comes to trapping surplus and investing in something and putting it to work is ultimately all those three things, money, property, and wealth, all conspire for one thing, and that's for you to create a life that you don't want to escape from. The life where you get to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want. It's personal sovereignty. That is the essence, the overarching reason why the Moorr app exists. So we're pretty excited. The feedback in here is pretty good, Ben. We're getting some really incredible feedback from people saying they love the app, they love using the money smarts, and the fact that it can all be integrated together is a real bonus.
And look, we've again thought long and hard about where Moorr is going to be accessible. And so as part of that decision, we did make a conscious choice to actually incorporate a mobile version of Moorr as well. We understand that people are busy, that they're on the go. And so we always wanted to make sure that wherever you were in the world at any moment in time, that you would have access to some of this information and data, and potentially also be productive when you might be on a tram or a train or in a car or whatever it may look like, in terms of being able to maybe set some new goals or, check in on some of the expenses that are happening and updating some of that data as well. So that is a big part of that. And so we think about the mobile application of the platform as something that is really about your financial life on the go. And so it's being designed that way. And all of the features and tools that we're building in to the mobile version is very much around that sort of understanding. So, as eventually we also start rolling in transactional and bank feeds and those types of things as well, all of that will travel with you. But right now, you can set your goals in there. You can do your money management in there. You've got your wealth clock in there to get in front of your eyes, get motivated by that. You can check in terms of how your wealth speed is going. Now, if there are unusual terms to your wealth clock and wealth speed, we recommend that you check them out. And then ultimately, the new features that we've also put in there, cash position, asset position, debt position, and tracking your overall net worth on that home dashboard as well, is going to give you an understanding of progress. And we know behavioral science says that if you can see that progress as being positive, you'll keep reinforcing those positive behaviors as part of that story.
Now, Candice has written in, Ben, and said, yes, I use Moorr, but in a rudimentary fashion. I'm calling in from Brisbane. I reckon that's what we hope that we can transform you, Candice, from this webinar. From a rudimentary fashion, you're going to see a really insightful way that you can use Moorr to manage your finances, but ultimately your property portfolio. So the goal is for people like Candice tonight, Ben.
Yep, to get further engaged and get further buy-in.
Transformation experience. So.
Absolutely. And then when we go into the overall the web app version. So let's go into the web app version. Trying to get the app to move on. There we go. So what we're seeing here is now we go a little bit deeper. Obviously, a lot more real estate. There's a lot of interesting ways in which we can show you insights and data, but it's also more about some of the other features that we've got in there. So if you're not familiar with something like MoneyFit, that's the peer comparison stuff that you can do to see, breaking down your expenses compared to your peers. And then the money stretch is obviously cash flow scenario modeling that's built in from day one, that's allowing you to effectively play in a bit of a sandpit and sort of understand if you're going down to single wages, what does that do to overall cash flow as part of that particular story. So we've got those expanded dashboards. We've got multiple insights at all different layers, which we're going to showcase for you as well. And and obviously what we're talking about here tonight, it's allowing the property investor to run and manage that investment portfolio that hopefully they're going to build in over time as well. So that just gives you a nice little place setter in terms of the two different access points. So you just think about it, it's like a bank app. You've got your web app, so you can get on your desktop and on your tablets and all of that. And then obviously you've got the mobile version, which allows you to get on through the mobile app as well.
And the feedback that we're getting practically too from that, Ben, is a lot of people like to do a lot of data diving on the desktop so they can get really into the detail. But then what it allows them is when they're in the train, they're at work, they're in the point of sale, or where it matters on the go. They can use the app. So, folks, we're going to strap in and give you some demonstration now. We're going to turn the camera off so that you can fully focus on what we have to say coming up. But Candice, strap in, and for the rest of you who feel like Candice, we're excited that hopefully you'll get a really cool insight into how you can really use this to the best advantage for yourself as a property investor.
All right, so let's talk about our demo couple. So this is the family of Beck and Dan and their two kids. So we'll learn a little bit more about them. This is the summary of their financial profile. So married in their late 30s. We've got two kids, aged 6 and 4, household income of 184 combined. So both professional couple. In terms of their current home, valuation 750,000 with an existing mortgage of 295. So they've done a great job in building out a solid amount of equity there as well. In terms of their mortgage repayments, you can see the annualized mortgage repayments there of almost 29,000. Total bills, we're talking about 28,910. 1,900. I'll start again, 28,190. Then we've got total spending, 49,240. I will never be able to read Taslotto numbers. That's very clear. And then obviously the annual surplus. So that's the critical number here, 35,042 as part of that story. And so what we're going to be doing is through that data that we've got, we're going to have a look at our first tool. So this is the Property Cashflow Projection Tool. So this tool was the most requested tool that people wanted to see. And it sort of makes sense, doesn't it?
Rightly so, Ben.
Rightly
we got to
so.
know the numbers.
We're running a business. We want to know how much business is going to need to have a cash injection, or how much is that business going to return us, not only in a cash sense, but also in growth over time as well. So if we start to think about that, to build something like this, you need the money in, the money out story. And so that's what we've got. We've got the rental income, we've got the outgoings, we've got the lending analysis, we've got the offset impact potentially, and a lot of off-the-shelf and also spreadsheets fail to accommodate for that offset calculation. Then you've got obviously profit before tax, you've got the tax adjustments or the tax calculations, and then finally the net result as part of that particular story. So here we go. Sort of hold on tight. Strap in. You've got me flying the boat or flying the ship tonight.
Well, that's the problem. You're flying the boat instead of sailing the plane.
Okay, so here we go here. So we're going to go into the live demo. So now I've got to bring up, hopefully it'll all come up on screen. And so there we go. All right, so I'm just going to drop down the card tray and then introduce you all to Dan and Beck. And we can see here we've got 184,000. You can see the current tax that they're paying is $40,000. They've got the annual surplus there of 35,042, total cash savings, total equity in their property. There's a little sample of their wealth clock, their wealth speed. There's their property moving forward. And you can see there's a nice little dashboard that breaks down a lot of that sort of gross income and then pre-tax and then taxable income. So you're getting a nice rich story there. You're seeing that breakdown of spending and bill payments. Now, again, they've done the work in terms of putting that number in there, and that allows them to get these types of insights. So what are we going to do? We're going to, for the first time, buy an investment property for this couple. So we're going to take you through the functionality of buying that investment property. Now, we've got a card tray option, which we can pop up from down here, or we can go through into My Financials in this area. Now, because I'm trying to speed this demonstration up, I'm going to show you how simple it is to just add an asset card. So I've gone for a single asset card. You can see here that I'm going to buy a property. And so when I click on that and I hit create, ultimately it sets me up with my property asset card. And you can see here I can put in what my property is going to be. So I'm going to buy a property called Parkin Street Rental, and then the address of that property. We have it all to pre-fill. So if I go Parkin Street, it starts a pre-fill, and I go Rockingham. So you can see here's the property. Now, in terms of the purchase price, I can throw in, well, I paid $600,000 for that particular property. I bought that property all the way back in July of 2004. And you can see that, and it's settled, that property settled on the 15th of August, 2024.
Oops.
Oh, no. So that's when you get it wrong. So you go up here and you say, no, don't do that. That'll be dangerous. Let's start again. We'll start the 18th?
15th of the 8th.
15th of August, 2024. Okay, we got it right this time. So that's now in play. And then, of course, I can put the current value, which would roughly be around 600,000 anyway. The primary purchase is for an investment property. The ownership is going to be joint between Beck and Dan. And then all of a sudden it starts to open up new areas. I've got property attributes. I've got potentially adding the rental income, and then also adding all of those additional properties as part of that. Now, in terms of speeding up the speed to result, what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to just remove this card. So to do that, the way in which the system is designed, and this is really important, because we're quite unique in the way in which we've designed the system. You can put historical data inside Moorr. So you can put data back into 1971 if you wanted to. If you knew your asset position and your wealth position back then, you can put all of that and all that data in. And that means that you can obviously archive before you delete. So you need to go through two stages where you archive and then you can delete or you can restore. So in this particular case, I'm going to delete this example. And so that means when I delete, the data's gone forever. So the data is out of the database forever. Now, why am I doing that? Well, as I was saying to you, I've been in the kitchen earlier and I've already sort of done most of the heavy lifting in terms of producing this scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to restore this customer and this investment property, I should say. And with the magic of all the preparation that I've done earlier, you can now start to see it's the same property. I've got the joint ownership in here. I've got the rental income cards and I've got several other cards. So what we're going to do now is we're going to then just quickly load in the rental income. So it's $560 weekly and we've got our tenant moving in. As you can see, there's the as at date. So that tenant is moving in from the 20th of August. So that's basic 20th of August is when they're going to be moving in. Then we've got the expenses. Now that's going to auto save that particular result when I click off it. So now it's saved that rental income. Now I'm going to go in here in terms of, and what you're going to see here is I'm just going to add one example. So I start with an expense item. And what we've done really, really nicely here is really, these are all the expense items that will be related to an investment property. So this is what the tax office is basically saying in terms of the categories that you would need to claim any expenses or maintenance or any type of costs associated with that property. So the example I'm going to use here to build out is the council rates. And so in this particular case, I'm going to be able to type in park and street. I'm going to call them rates. And so effectively that's an essential fixed cost. So that's $1,700. Now that is an annual figure. So I changed the frequency to that figure as well. And then you can see in here, the Money Smart Star, we won't go into in detail tonight, but that will also just telling me where that money's coming from in terms of my money management solution. So I've hit create, and that has ultimately created that new council rate card. Now you can see all the others that we've got in here. So we're quickly going to add all of these expenses in. So insurance is also a fixed cost. So there's nothing discretionary about that. So that's $1,200. Thank you, Bryce. So I've added that $1,200 in. I'm going into my next one, which is now also the land tax. So I've done the calculations on a $450,000 land value for this property. So in Western Australia, that's $585. Again, that's a fixed cost. That is going to be yearly. So we'll set that. Then I'm going into my repairs and maintenance. And remember that repairs and maintenance can sometimes be treated differently from a tax point of view. So I always like to break up my maintenance. And so this is technically a provision because I really don't know how much maintenance I'm going to have. So in this case, I'm going to set $3,000 as the essential. And I'm also going to put $1,000 in there over the course of the year.
That's a bit conservative, mate.
100,000. All right, so I've got that done. Now I've got the property management fees. So let's put the property management fees in here. So again, that's pretty much a fixed cost. So I've used the ongoing costs. I think it was about 10.5% I said was what the fee was going to be. So that's $3,057. And again, that's going to be a yearly figure. So that's added in here as well. And then I've got my rates, which I've already added in. Here's my repairs, and this is provisions as well. So in this particular case, I'm going to put in here $1,500 as potentially expected to be paid, and I'll put a $500 discretionary amount in there as well. So that one will lock that away yearly. And then finally, I'm looking at the water and sewage services supply. So if I go in here, I can also say, well, this is pretty much a fixed cost as well. And so I'm looking at $430 for that particular item, and that's also yearly. So when I close all of those out, you can now start to see that I've collected all of those costs associated with that particular property, from my rates to my property management, to my maintenance provisions, to my land tax, to my insurance, to my water rates. And I've also collected the rental estimate here as well. Now you'd be thinking, well, is that all my costs, Bryce? No, that's not necessarily all my costs, because don't forget,
It would be nice if the
if
next
there
one
was
didn't
no,
come up.
if there was no debt, then ultimately that would be a different story. So what I've also done prior to this is I'll move out of that property card, and I've also archived a couple of new loans. Now, if you've got an investment savvy broker, you should always know that you do 80% against the new property, and then you can also release equity out of an existing property, and so you don't have cross securitization. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to restore this particular card. Now, of course, if you were doing this from scratch, you wouldn't have any of those stored in. You would just create the new borrowings card. And the critical thing here is the relationship in terms of the purpose and the security. So what you need to do is the purpose of the loan is for my park and street rental. So I need to make sure that I make that connection with that particular asset card. And in terms of for this particular property, the loan, however, has been secured against my 26 Anywhere Street, my home. So for Beck and Dan, that's basically been secured against that property as well. So you can see here, we're not cross securitized. I've got my first loan in place. Of course, I would need to go through putting in all of the repayment information and all of the other data to get an accurate picture. And so I go through all of those details, and just by clicking off that, it automatically saves. I'm now going to restore the 480, which is the 80% loan that we've got against the new purchase. And so again, I need to just make that connection. So I connect that against Park and Street as the loan purpose. And in this particular case, it is a loan secured by this new purchase of this new asset. So sorry, quick fingers. So there we go. It's Park and Street rental. So both of those are now connected to the Park and Street rental property. So all of a sudden now, I've got my full story against this particular property. So I've got my Park and Street rental property, and effectively I can now go and have a look in my insights page, and you can see there's the asset value when we first bought it. And again, if you've got an older property and you've got old valuations on that property, again, you can go back into your details area. You can then click on what we call the change log, the historical change log, and you can add new values in and set any of those dates in the past. You can't set future dates. You can only set dates in the past, and that allows you to then move away from your spreadsheets and bring everything into the cloud and into obviously the next generation of time, as opposed to working in old spreadsheets and so forth. But now here we go, Bryce. This is the drum roll. We're now in a position to talk to that cash flow story. So here we are. There's our gross rent coming through. There is our insurance. There's our land tax. There's our maintenance provisions. There's the ongoing management fees. There's the rates. There's the provisions for repairs. There's the water and sewage. There's the two loans coming up. And so we can see the total cost. Now that's 29,000. Remember, we had 35,000 in buffer. So we're within inside that. But guess what? That's the pre-tax story here. So we're going to get some money back. It's very clear. You can see here that we've got tax saved, which is $8,130, which means our final outlay is only going to be that $18,970. Now, there's a couple of fun things that we can also do here. We can go deeper. We can start to have a look at what we were saying before. So this is the loan that we've got against this new property. If we wanted to include, if we had an offset that was attached to this particular loan, then any of that offset calculation would be automatically adjusted for under the hood. You don't need to get the formulas out. You don't need to get the spreadsheet. You don't need to calculate anything. It's all done by our team in terms of the way in which the software is built at our back end. And so we've got a couple of those options. Now, so if you turn that offset account off, you'll get a little notice that sort of says not included in calc. So that will say offset not included in calcs in terms of those things. Now, because a little reminder for those people playing at home, you should only have the offset against your principal place of residence. Once that bucket's full, because remember that's non-deductible debt, then you can start putting offset buckets against your investment purchases as well.
So Ben, this is like a game changer. We need to pause and reflect here, right? Because what happens is most people who are doing Excel spreadsheets, or they've just got stuff in a file that they need to do later, and they really don't get around to getting this sort of data curated until the end of the tax year. They don't get to understand the insights that come from knowing exactly where you're at. You can do this regular on a monthly basis and get up to date. So it's kind of a bit like Joe the builder who was building the house. And at the end of the financial year, sends everything off to the accountant and goes, how did I go? Now you just get to get those insights up front, on the spot. And that also helps you make different decisions about your portfolio as well. So you can get them out of those spreadsheets and get them into this platform and see it on the spot.
Well, we also found out earlier that they were paying around, over $40,000 in taxes. Well, now, obviously, with this investment property, you can see there that it breaks down also based on the household income, then works out the tax bracket in which that person lives in, and then does the automatic calculations in terms of estimated tax saved. And so that's another little feature that's also built in to this particular tool. And you can see, whenever you can see little 3 buttons like that, you can also have other little features where let's say you want to make sure that you've got all of the expenses in there. Well, did you miss any? That's a little trigger there for you to sort of say, are there any other costs that I need to add inside that? And I can click that on. And again, you can also click universally to say include offset calculations, as opposed to having to go in here as well. So anytime you see those 3 little dots, it's always, there's a name for those 3 little dots, but do you reckon I would know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
Well, Jade would know. But folks, can you put your hands up if you think this would change the way that you manage your investment properties, if you're currently doing that? Just see if we can see some hands. Just give us some feedback. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's great. That's fantastic.
We can see those hands going up in droves, to be honest, folks. So, yeah, and that's the goal, right? Is, we're property investors. We get it.
We totally get it. So now there's another little piece of gold here, Bryce. Are you ready to sort of share one of your little lessons in terms of some of the little functionality we have in the web app?
Yes. So on the right hand side here, the little hamburger drop down menu. See, the expenses can actually get quite busy. Assets, borrowings, and income. Quite straightforward, Ben.
Yep.
But the expense cards, and we'll explain this in a bit more detail shortly, what that means. But they can get a bit busy. So if you just click this little button up here, what it does is it shows you on a landscape version, and you come down to the expenses and they get grouped. So you can see the household expenses, the general living and lifestyle, vehicle transport, and so on. So again, we're going to expand on this a bit more, but just wanted to show what that functionality at the top is so that you can actually get a better sense of what those expenses are. And then you come down here to the investment property expenses, all that stuff that Ben just put in. You see this little expansion here, bang. There we go. You can see all those expenses as well.
So there you go. Just another little way to navigate, make your life a little bit easier to organise your finances and feel in control. That's what we're all about here in terms of playing out that particular story. So now I'm going to close the card tray. We can obviously then see the dashboards as part of that new property potentially coming into play. So we can also see in terms of how that's moved the dial in terms of your overall experience as well. And that just gives you a really good insight into the tool number 1 in terms of what we were trying to achieve.
Why anyone wouldn't use this, Ben, to manage their portfolios beyond me.
So let's recap some of the quick benefits. So firstly, how much does it cost me to hold a property? We've solved that question. In terms of, am I positively or negatively geared? Obviously for Beck and Dan's scenario, they're very much negatively geared because they've just bought the property and they've used a lot of debt. They haven't put any cash down to be able to control that property. In terms of how much tax or impact has it had? So it's obviously reduced their current tax at the moment, but just be mindful, like all of us, we're all happy to pay our tax if we're making money. So over time, when that property becomes positively geared, or if they ever sell that property, there's a nice big tax windfall coming to the ATO as part of that. Then you've obviously got the cash flow impact, which is how much do I need to kick in over the next 12 months? Well, we've worked that out. It's around $18,000. And if you do a variation request, based on this, so you can do a variation request with your accountant based on this data, and any of that sort of tax loss can actually come into your pay slip every time you're paid, and that goes straight into your offset. So that is another little, money hack in terms of making your money work efficiently for you. And then have I got passive income, or is it generating a negative loss at the start before it obviously builds out into that passive income? And you saw there a breakdown of each owner's tax story and outcome as part of that particular story. So that just gives you a bit of an idea in terms of tool number one and why it's going to be a valuable tool for you when you're doing your annual planning and you're also trying to understand effectively where that property sits in the overall equation.
Now, the team's given us a couple of questions here, Ben, that is relevant to that section.
Sure.
Brad said, my investment property is owned 50-50 with another family member. Any tips? So the answer there is to change the ownership to other and allocate yourself 50% and the rest.
Beautiful. That's a great little tip. So
50%.
So someone else outside of the family owns the property. That's you and other, and then you do your proportionate. So you're allowed to do it in terms of percentage, in terms of how you break that down. That's a great question.
And Pancard just asked, is there an option we can store the data for different financial years? Certain expenses are just one-off, i.e. changing the locks, carpets, etc. So
yes. So effectively what's going to happen is what we're sort of talking about here in a lot of respects is the targeted expenditure. Transactions are coming in terms of being able to track actuals versus targeted. So we've got some exciting developments. The developers are working on that. We're scoping that out right now, and it's currently about to start building out that functionality as we go forward. Now, the next tool we wanted to introduce you to is the rental analysis tool.
This is in the top 3 requested things that
it was. So once I know, okay, I'm going to buy this property, well, even before I buy this property, sometimes I might want to get a sense of what the indicative rent might be for that market. So that's exactly what we're going to be looking at here. So this one's packed with peaches. It's busy. So let's go. We obviously got the localized weekly rental estimate or weighted rental estimate, comparable rental range. We've got the min, maximum rents. We've got the comparable medians, weighted average rents, days on market guide, in terms of the historical rental value charts that tracks all of those types of things. And we've got a little smart assistant, Opti. So Opti is short for optimization. It's built into the platform. We're doing a lot of testing and work with our AI team to basically start to build that story out as well. And so let's now switch back into the demo tool and take ourselves through a live demonstration of this brand new feature that we've recently added to the Moorr platform. So let me just now bring up that platform again. Let's this time go in via My Financials into our cards. There's the Park and Street rental property. I'll open that card up again, and you can see here I've got rental analysis. But wait, why am I getting a rental analysis? Well, there's a good reason for that, because we haven't spent the time in putting in the attributes of the property. So we can put those attributes in. So it's a 4-bedroom. In this particular case, I know this property well. It's a 1-bathroom, 2 car spaces. So once I confirm those attributes, what happens? All of a sudden, the analysis is done in the background, and boom, what we've got is that full analysis. But wait a minute, Opti's also got something that it wants to tell me. So it says that I've located the property there, and I've run some analysis based on the data that I've been able to collect within a 2.5 kilometre radius. Now that's interesting, right? Because in effective cases, what we've got here is the radius moves out every 500 metres based on the design from our data scientists who's put this thing together. And so effectively it's saying I've had to reach wider, and that's potentially because there may not have been, prior to this property, I know this property well, it's been in a family for many, many years and they've never rented it out. So this is the first time that this property is going to be rented out. So you can see here that that's why it's used the weighted average rent as opposed to doing an estimated weekly rent, because if it's got a number that it's working from, it can build off that number. If it doesn't, it just expands that search engine out a little bit further and starts to do that analysis. And so we can see here, if the quality of the property was at a low range, you could see here that it'll be around $500 would be, and you can see where this property is being ranked in terms of that assessment, right up to if the property were. Now, we're not going to know whether there's going to be any renovations recently done. Remember, this is a computer algorithm that's working here as part of that story. Now, again, if you want to learn more, it'll give you that story in terms of what that weighted average means. And so you can start to get an understanding of that. And then what you can also see here is we've got the median rent. So what does that mean? And you can start to see here an explanation of median rents. Then you've got maximum rents. And then you've got the median rent based on the suburb. And then you've got the weighted average rent, which is based on radius. So you're starting to get all this rich information, and then that days on market that we were talking about. And then when you go down here, you can actually see the trend lines in terms of how that data has been tracked over that period of time. So you hover over the chart and you'll start to get an indication of that. Now, what I really like about the way we've designed our rental analysis tool is we've spent a lot of time in terms of focusing in on radius more so than we've focused in on suburb. So if you've got a beachside property, well, really, and it's a very, very large suburb, you don't really care what 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom houses are renting for 2 kilometres away from the beach. What you want is the radius closer to the beach that's going to give you a fairer representation in terms of what you think the estimated rent might be in that particular area. So that really is an important sort of story here in terms of understanding how to best use this tool. And remember, it is an estimate. It's a calculated estimate, so hopefully it's going to get pretty accurate in terms of the results it's going to deliver. But on occasion, there could be some outliers and it may not necessarily pick up enough data. So in some cases, you may not get a result. But what you do have to do is you need to make sure that you've done put all the details in terms of those attributes. And you can see there are further attributes that you can also put in here, such as living areas. I know there's one. You can also put in terms of conditions of property. You can start to put the internal space, the land size area. In this particular case, it's a 1/4 acre block. So that's 1,042 square meters in terms of what it is. And what we can also see here is annual depreciation amount. So what we haven't also factored in is the annual depreciation amount. So you can also start to think about...
Can I jump in there, Ben?
Yes,
Jamie's asked the question, can we add in the depreciation schedule somehow to get a clear financial position after tax?
Welcome to the game. Yes, you can. So by clicking on the depreciation, you can build in every year of your depreciation schedule through the historical log change, whack that information in, click the save button, build all of that out as part of that story. And then, so cancel yes, because I'm not going to add anything here at the moment. But then I also pick prime cost benefit or diminishing value.
Shut the gate,
so
Ben.
I select all that in as well.
It's almost like this has been developed by property investors.
No.
How would you think
Surely we don't know what we're doing, do we? After 30 plus years of doing this, each of us. So there you go in terms of trying to get a bit of that information in. Of course, we would always say, whack your property manager in here. It's the one home for everything. So we want you to basically store all your information in here as much as possible. I'd also put in here that, you know, in terms of the historical capital growth, well, guess what? When we build all of that research in, and when we're also starting to access some of those historical sales, that historical capital growth is going to give you an indication of how your property is performing. So we've spoken a lot tonight about the cash flow side of it, but it's also that historical performance, which is what we call the CAGR internally in terms of the capital, the annual capital growth as part of that story as well.
Hey, Ben, Tweez asked a question. Hi, team. I've seen a neat feature in another app where if you put in your property address, it brings in the estimated price of the property.
We're on it. I promise you we are on it. So we've done the rental analysis first, but we do have automated valuations as part of our product pathway in terms of that. And we've sort of been doing some testing in terms of our AVMs to make sure that we're giving the most reliable estimate and the gauge in terms of what we think that property might be worth in its current market at that moment in time. Using the same type of thing, radius analysis, comparable property analysis, and crunching all of that data to be able to be in that particular story. So there you go in terms of what it looks like as part of seeing that. So let's...
Hey, folks, can we show some hands for anyone who get value out of that rental analysis once they put their properties in, where you could see benefit for you in managing your portfolio, Ben? It is
hundreds of responses, Bryce. That's very cool. I'm very, very proud of that. And Jade should be super proud of that work. And obviously Alex, our analyst in the data scientist, who's put all that work into it as well. So let's just also quickly go through a recap. There's lots of value in this, right? It's a handy wizard to help you guide to get those results. So in other words, if you're not getting a result, the wizard should pop up and say, hey, we put all the attributes in there. If you're still not getting a result, we're going to be telling you why. It needs to be a house. It can't be a commercial property. So there's obviously different choices. It can't be vacant land. There's no rental assessment on that. So make sure that it's a livable rental residential dwelling, not something else. It's obviously an incredibly useful tool for for monitoring the market movements around rent in that particular
Pretty
area.
easy to stay out of touch if you had a
course.
tenant for a long time, or
100%.
not necessarily arm's length, and you've just had a really great tenant for 5 years. You might not know where you're actually at.
And you still might, because they're a great tenant, give them a nice little sort of good value tenancy. But of course, that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
And so, and this is what we sort of say, it provides plenty of information for you to have an honest discussion with your property manager. Like most of the time, you might just be taking the property manager's word for it, which is okay. And if they've got evidence backing that, but this is also puts you in the conversation in terms of making sure, well, here's the analysis that the Moorr platform has done in terms of looking at that as well. And that should then give you confidence about the historical rental performance of the localized area. So if you think about that, okay, when you're looking at that long-term chart where we're going back 3 years, how's the market performed in this area? And we can obviously see rents going up comfortably in that Rockingham area as well. Obviously, then is a very helpful spread of data. So one of the things we were really conscious about in the design stages when Jade was sort of doing the research is to make sure that I could get enough information. I wasn't just getting a figure, and it wasn't supported by any other breadth of research. And so there's a nice spread of data that we're looking at here to help inform our view in terms of where comparable properties in that market's renting and where we think this particular property sits inside that particular story as well. There's a lot there. Well, I think we need to take a moment. Right, let's now quickly move on in terms of we want to recap the core structures and functionality. So what you have seen us been playing around with here tonight is this whole idea of financial classifications, which is the income, expenditure, assets, and borrowings. Then we've obviously got the financial items. So those items are fixed items. So we've been doing this for over 15 years in terms of inside our advisory business, in terms of we've got over 73 or 74 categories that we have fixed, and that then trains our research and our information. But what's new, in terms of when we released the rebranded Moorr is these financial cards. And so we've been talking about the concept of the card. So under any of these items, you can have multiple cards. So you can tailor the way in which you want to structure your own household and how you manage your money your way. And so you can see in the example that I've used here, if you've got digital subscriptions, you could just have them as one card. You don't need to break them out. But if you wanted to break them out into Spotify, Foxtel, et cetera, you are able to do that as part of that story. And you can see a little note there down the side, coming soon transactions. So how the structure is going to work and what's under the hood is those transactions will then connect in to the cards, which will then connect into the items. So we'll be able to give you dashboard insights at item level, at card level, at transactional level. And so all of a sudden you can start seeing all this rich information. And that shows up comfortably and importantly already in the card. So if we have a look at cards, you can see there are those items. So there's your classification layer. There's your items. So you can always see which items that it's classified into. And then you can also see in terms of the actual cards themselves. And what Bryce showed you a moment ago, when you're actually inside the platform, there's also things like groupings. So we've also added, if you want to have the groupings, which is our designed groupings, you can also see them in the groupings layer. So it really does give you that flexibility for you to feel like you're in control, you're in charge about how you organize your finances. But underneath that, under the bonnet, it's a rules-based system with all of these interaction and connectivity between the different cards. Like if you can't have an expense for an asset if you don't have the asset in there. So you've got to make that connection from asset to expense. And if there's borrowings attached to that, you can see how we've made all of those connection points as part of that story as well. So that's just giving you a really clear understanding in terms of how it all comes together in terms of a quick look under the bonnet. Now it's time for some more questions, Bryce. Have we got any more questions?
We do have a number of questions, but we've actually got tons of questions. But this one's from David. Love the demo, gents. From your perspective, can you explain a little more about the benefit of doing this approach versus just waiting till the end of the financial year and just seeing the result of net cash flow that you show in your tax return?
I think if you're flush with cash, and you think that, at the end of the day that you can do some quick calculations on the back of an envelope, but that's not every one of us. In fact, that's probably, you can count those in the 1% of people who do this type of thing. So we're all about planning to become what you plan to become. And imagine, David, if let's say you did that, and actually with a bit of analysis, we could work out you could have actually got a second property, 10 months in to that journey. So all of a sudden you've got lazy money. So it is really about trying to think through that particular story about where are you getting the value out of pulling all this stuff together. And for me, I like to be organized, I like to be planned, and ultimately that then allows me to live the lifestyle by design that I'm looking for. Right? So that's probably my point to it. But there's nothing stopping you for doing nothing. And we know that there's a lot of the population out there. There's something in Chris Helder's new book, which is quite funny. You wouldn't see someone who's worried about how much weight they put on a holiday to go out and buy a set of scales. They just don't want to see the answer. So there are a lot of people out there who don't necessarily want to see the answer. And I think that's what we're also playing into in terms of that story. I'm just going to put our camera on just so we can also re-engage in some of this question time as well.
I think too, Ben, so one of the things that we're trying to do is change the narrative for people who, from the mum and dad property investor to the small business owner.
Correct.
And if you're running a small business, chances are if it's going to stay a going concern, it's going to have some form of success, and you want to pivot and flex to the market conditions, you'd want to be having that at least quarterly, ideally monthly, checking on your business. So our mentoring to you, David, would be around, you want to be across your numbers. If you're a property investor, you definitely want to be across your numbers. And as we build out more layers and more functions and more features in this platform, the insights will only get more rich. That'll allow you to make better informed judgments about how you would manage your property portfolio.
So Michael Montgomery says, finally getting everything into Moorr after a long time listening and watching, getting everything aligned and focusing, finally taking action. So I love that. And in Melbourne. So that's a really nice story in terms of what Michael's asked us there.
All right. What have we got here?
Been using Moorr for a couple of months now. Our first investment property just settled last week. Big shout out to the team who made this happen for us. So there you go. Now you've got a reason. Who's that from? Is it Lachlan who said that? Been using Moorr for a couple of months. Beautiful. So Lachlan, now you've got a reason to actually add the investment asset, rental property, connect all of those expenditure cards in there as well. Obviously add the rental income, and now you're going to see a really clean projection as part of that story as well for you.
This one from Chris says, really enjoy Moorr, transitioning from a barefoot investor model. Thanks for a great tool. I think there's a good point there because Scott Pape's done a phenomenal job of creating an environment where people are more conscious about their spending. But there's a couple of things that we think he missed. One is including offset benefits into your overall picture. And two, he's obviously very bearish on property investing. So I guess for people who want to get the discipline of his approach and then bring that into an application that not only has investing in isolation compared to the rest of your life, but you can actually do all things together, Ben, to see, okay, what impact will investing in property have on the other major decisions I want to make in my life? So that's really, really encouraging.
Yeah, so we've also got a really important question about security. It should be a big question, right? Because ultimately it's personal financial data in there as well. Some people are still using nicknames in terms of for identification purposes as part of that. Now, bearing in mind the property addresses to get the right accurate analysis and so forth needs to be real. But in terms of, going incognito into the platform, you can do that. But of course, we've got all of those extra security layers, SSL level security around two-factor authentication in terms of being able to go into there as well. And we do have a link in terms of the security and privacy as part of the platform. So
we take that super serious.
It's everything. I mean, ultimately, it's everything. One of the things that Moorr isn't, it's not a banking app. You can't do payments through it. No one's getting access to your actual data. So always be mindful of that. It's just a replication of your current financial position. But that said, it's still serious, right? I mean, ultimately, it's a bit like your medical records. They are your records. So we do take great care in terms of encrypting all of that data and making sure we continually keep doing that. In fact, we've actually got a project starting next week where we're doing another deep dive in terms of penetration testing and just looking at the way in which we're structuring the data in preparation for our connection into open banking and getting bank data feeds in, and also in preparation for how we then manage our transactional counts as the transactions that we then store associated with those cards as well.
This is a good question from Michelle. She said, "Hi Ben and Bryce, I've downloaded the app. How do I link into my desktop login? It's asking me to start from scratch and enter all my information again." Michelle, super simple. If you've started on the mobile, just use the same login credentials on the desktop, and the data is totally transferable. That's the idea.
Yep.
So it's same details on the desktop. If you started on the mobile, do the desktop. You start on the desktop, do that on the mobile. It is 100%.
It's like internet banking, whether you're logging into your mobile app or you're logging into your web version or your desktop version of that, you're using the same credentials in terms of username and password. And obviously, in terms of the two-factor authentication, that doesn't happen on the first login. The second time you're coming in, we'll be asking you to actually set up that for obviously added security for you in terms of how you want to operate as part of that.
James, give us some feedback. I have 3 investment properties, so love being able to have everything at my fingertips. And when you need to apply for a new loan, the budget section can be copied across. Also, husband needs the data for work stuff, so I pass him the laptop and everything is in there. Thanks, guys.
Love it.
What else have we got here, Ben? Can you add property management fees as a percentage based off the weekly rent? Haven't implemented that yet, but that's
yeah, look, I mean, ultimately, once you know the figure, so if you're, let's say it's, you know, in this particular case, I think I used 10.5%. So I just calculated out the gross rent, 10.5%, and just put the value in. So, but you're good point in terms of making, okay, one of the things we are going to do that I know Jade is also working on is the rental contract. There's obviously a lot of other important information that's stored inside a rental contract. So the ability to potentially one day upload that rental contract. Remember, we want Moorr to be a single home for even potentially document collection as well. But you've then got obviously the date in which the contract was signed. You get all the terms and conditions as part of that. You've got the rental estimate, which is the actual rental that's agreed as per the contract, and potentially to that point in terms of the rental fee, the property management fees are going to be charged as part of that contract. So that is a really good point in terms of pulling all that together. And it's the same sort of thing in terms of what we've got to be working on. Again, if we want this to be the very best property investment app, we've got to also find a way to capture all of the capital costs. So all of those costs that we had in terms of stamp duty and any other costs, if one day we want to sell that property, we get a nice little tax summary in terms of, so it's really clear in terms of a summary each year, but also an overall summary in terms of, because that's what your tax accountant's going to ask you for. It's like, okay, you made a capital gain. What can we add back in terms of capital costs associated with that? So we're on a program of work here, and we're not going to let up until we continue to keep building out all of these new features.
So you guys are getting in on the ground floor here because it'll continue to iterate over time. And Lewis has said, "Great work, guys. It would be pretty rare to use an offset account against the investment debt. Do you routinely see anyone using an offset on investment property if they still have owner-occupied debt? Nice to have if you extinguish the PPR debt." It's kind of just a North Star. So you're right. You want to put the offset against the most expensive debt, which is pretty much a principal place of residence. But to Ben's point there, once that's paid off, you're then just looking around the portfolio to see what is the most expensive debt, and then put the next offset against that. So you've got to have the vision. You've got to be forward projecting and forward pacing where you're going to go, and that's why that feature was put in there, Lewis.
Well, yeah, I needed it. You know, if I was going to move from my spreadsheets into using Moorr, and I'm again 25 years into investing physically into property, so I have that situation where I've filled up my principal place of residence bucket, and now I'm starting to fill up the final buckets when it comes to those investment properties. So it absolutely needs to be, built for old people like me who are on the downhill skiing moment in terms of our property passive income that we're trying to build out.
You're not too much of a fossil yet, mate. But,
I'm a fossil.
Hey, Blake, I just found the rental analysis tab. Wow, well done. This is fantastic. Thank you for that feedback. Michael said, "Love this. We'll definitely be ditching Excel now." There we go, man. Goals achieved.
We got a winner. We got
one. No, we went through that one.
Well, there's 56 questions that we're still going to answer. Hey, listen, we are conscious of time. I want to talk a couple of things around where you can give us feedback. I think that is really important. So let's move to the next slide. So how and where you can and share feedback. So that is, if you're reporting a bug or sharing an idea or want something added, there are different areas inside the web app and also the mobile app. So you can see the mobile app on the far right-hand side as I'm looking at the screen. We've got report a bug. When you click on that, it doesn't just necessarily have to be a bug. Any feedback at all that will help improve your experience with the platform, we want to hear from you. In terms of what you also saw in terms of on some of those financial cards is let us know in terms of something doesn't look right or whatever, let us know. And so that is also giving us feedback into our team. And then finally, in terms of on the web app, we've also just got under the knowledge center there, we've got need help, reach out here as well. So we do have a customer support team that are standing by to help you out. They are not 24/7. At the end of the day, the platform remains free to use. So it's really important, but we still want to make sure you've got that great customer support as part of that particular story.
And folks, where you can help us, if you're actually thinking, wow, I can ditch my Excel spreadsheets, or I've just unlocked a feature that I didn't realize existed, we would love for you to share with your friends and your network and your work colleagues and anyone that you know that's a property investor, because the platform's free. We've put a lot of money into this platform for the benefit of us as property investors. We've created a community of people on the property couch, and we've curated a community of people in our business who are relying on investment property to self-fund their retirement and get the lifestyle by design that they're looking for. So any help that you can give us to spread the word, let other people know about this platform, we would be very, very grateful. If you've got value, please share it to someone else who you think might get some value as well.
So speaking of value, nice little segue in terms of some of the coming soon ideas. Now, one of the great ideas that have come from the team internally, and we've also tested this, from a sample point of view, is the key date reminders. So you've got things like, sort of fire alarms. You've got things like, sort of reminders on your half-yearly inspections on those properties to make sure that you're holding your property manager accountable with the work that they're doing. So key date reminders has a massive opportunity inside the property pillar inside the platform. But just thinking about that, we're also expanding our headspace around what key dates can do in terms of just running your life. And some of those bill reminders, that'll all be built in terms of what that looks like. So keep an eye out for that. We're in that sort of prototyping stage of key date reminders that you can attach to each of the cards and then ultimately have a universal register of all future key dates in a beautiful sequential order.
Folks, that's a game changer. Imagine you could log in and just go, my insurance is running out, my lease is running out, I've got the rates due here. Like, it's just this timeline of things coming up. That's just mental horsepower that just gets rested.
Correct. It takes the effort out of you, gives you your time back.
Do not underestimate the power of that key date reminders. It is unbelievably powerful. I'm personally very, very excited about that feature being released.
And then when we're starting to, we talked earlier about those property tax record keeping. So we want to make sure that we've got those as well. We're going to be tracking actuals versus target. So what we've talked about tonight is that, so this is the estimated and projected cash that we're going to have to put into the property, but we want to be able to track that. So when transactions come, all of a sudden it opens up that ability to track targeted versus actual. So that's an exciting piece. Money Smarts 2.0. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Money Smart side of the platform, it's the origin story of the platform. It's our best-selling second book that we had in terms of Make Money Simple Again, is the rules-based money management system that thousands, if not tens of thousands of people are using. In terms of property address data history, so we've got rich amount of history, hundreds of millions of data points across all of Australian property. So we're going to unpack that. And so you'll also be able to see any history that we've got about a property that you might have bought only 5 years ago, but we might have data back to the early 70s in terms of what it was sold for. And that'll give you an insight in terms of potentially what sort of capital growth it's had over that really long period of time. Cash flow Sankey charts where you can see how your money's been distributed as it comes in. Where does all that money go? Right across your household. Transactional tracking and more as part of that. And then updated knowledge center is also coming in there. So we're revamping that. So all the tutorials, all the educational stuff will be part of that particular story. Now, if you are waiting for transactions to come, I can also recommend you may want to get ahead of that game. If you use Money Smarts, and you actually, with some of the costs that you want to track, the expenses that you want to track, if you convert them to a provisioning jar expense, then you can track them. So we do have transaction tracking inside the platform, but it's built into the Money Smart section of the platform. But if that's sort of holding you back, don't let that hold you back. And then obviously how we're building out 2.0 is that they will integrate also with financial cards as well. So it'll be a seamless process. And we have plans of launching the Money Smarts 2.0 in October. So that will come around really quickly in terms of what that story looks like.
Oops, I moved first.
Oh, that's all right. Let's move along here now. And so we'll look, in terms of some free value, we wanted to always make sure for you coming here tonight, we wanted to give you some great value. So this is the Money Smarts books that links into, it's called Make Money Simple Again. It tells the story of how Money Smarts works, and you have a ready, set, go, and you have that sort of process around, the steps to be able to set up for success. It's a rules-based system. It's very easy to run, and it's designed to actually not have to worry about tracking every dollar that you spend. But we understand with digitization, with multiple offsets, we are moving with the times in terms of how we're building out 2.0 in terms of Money Smarts. Some other great free stuff. For those of you who aren't familiar, we obviously have a podcast called The Property Couch, and that's available every Thursday on your preferred podcast player. And if you haven't already checked out our property market reports, you're crazy. These things are free. They go into a huge amount of depth that one day, we'll be able to do these types of research inside Moorr. But until then, we've curated them all into a very, very detailed PDF that you'll get straight into your inbox. And in our select residential property business, we actually charge about $38 for these reports.
Yeah, they're not just scraped from the internet,
No.
just basic demographic data. There's some grunt behind the detail there.
Well, yeah, that's right. If you bought them through our other platform, then ultimately you'd be charged $38. So we're doing them completely free for obviously our community of listeners and the community inside Moorr as well. So that is something to note. So use those QR codes to scan that. And finally, if you haven't already scanned the mobile app version of it and you want to download that, let's say you've just been working with the web app version, by simply downloading the mobile app and putting the same credentials in, all that information will appear on your mobile version of the platform as well. So thanks very much for everyone. Have we got a final?
Well, just if anyone could raise their hand and let us know if they're excited about the app, what's coming up, the features, giving us some feedback. Yes, we can see you. Thank you for sharing that participation, which is
very
good.
kind.
Well, folks, it's been wonderful to spend some time with you. We know that you have to give up a fair bit if you've invested an hour hanging out with me and Ben, so we don't take that lightly. And just a reminder that this week on the Property Couch, Ben and I have done our mid-year update, so we certainly want to encourage you this Thursday at 3 o'clock to check that out, folks. But stay tuned to the Property Couch, because we are definitely going to give you all the updates. People find out about stuff there first. And if you haven't tonight already downloaded it, please go and download it. And hopefully, folks, if we go back to our original feedback that we got, where rudimentary use of Moorr, hopefully we've achieved the goal of, one, adding value and showing you that there's a different way to manage your portfolio. But two, hopefully there's a bunch of you that were kind of just using Moorr, Ben.
Yeah.
But as a result of tonight, you've seen another opportunity for you to get into the detail. Ben's shown you the way that that you can actually run through it. So I'll just remind you that if you go to moorr.com.au, that's moorr.com.au, we have some blogs there, and within those blogs, we show you how to actually use some of these features. So one of the questions we got before was, can you guys go back and show us how to enter another property? Couple of things. One, you're going to get a replay of this webinar, so you can push play, fast forward to that section and watch it again. But two, stay tuned on the website, and because we realize that people need to know how to use this, so you'll get all the
we've got a what's new area there. We've got all the different sort of tutorials and the reasons why we're building all the different features and tools, not only for the property investor, but also for the general money manager as well. So that is an important part of that particular story. And that's why, in closing out, it's really simple message. If you want to achieve more, then that's up to you. And ultimately, that's about taking action. And all we're trying to do is give you a platform that allows you to organize and coordinate all of that information in one place, an all-in-one platform that's going to be built out. We're only just beginning on our journey in terms of what we want to provide for you, but just think about no other place. I don't need filing cabinets. Just think in the future, I won't even need filing cabinets. Everything, all the documents will be in there. Everything will be in there. I know that's a big dream, but that's the dream pathway we're on. I want to digitize everything. I want to have everything in one place in the cloud that's available to me. It's where the world's heading. We've got Opti that's built in there. So one day you're going to have a smart assistant talking to you about your budget. All of those things are a big part of our grand vision in terms of how we see Moorr playing out as the go-to for property investors in this country.
So share it, folks. Tell your friends. Thanks for spending some time with us this evening. We're about to sign off. If you've got any problems, any troubles downloading that app, let us know. Thanks for your questions. We've taken all that feedback on board. Some really, really good suggestions on the next level for improvements, Ben. But mate, do we say it until next time?
Well, until next time, if you want to achieve more, use Moorr.
Super.